I do. We do have some questions suggested by Chinmoy Prabhu as backup. Unless anybody present has any suggestion, any request for today's discussion, maybe Ananga Manjari. Ananga Manjari, do you have any questions, any topic you'd like to discuss? When I was with her in London in August last month, and she had some really nice topics for discussion. Do you want to make any suggestions, or should we continue?
We can continue.
Okay.
I have two questions.
Oh,
maybe
yeah, I remember. You said you had some questions.
Yeah, if it's not possible to talk about this today, I mean.
No, definitely. Yeah, sure.
I can wait for next week. But just one simple question I have. Do I remember you telling us that Srila Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he didn't like to use the word preaching?
That's right. That's right. You know what? I think there's a whole swarm of mosquitoes coming in here. Someone left the front door open. I'll be right back. Oh man, got all these mosquitoes in here. Oh dear. Oh, the mosquitoes are, oh gosh. Okay, sorry about that. Just had a whole swarm. You wouldn't think of Hungary as being, you know, a hot country, but there being mosquitoes, but it's actually been quite hot here. Well, anyhow, yeah, that's a really nice, I'm really happy that you brought that up. Yeah, I heard Srila Gurudev mention it once or twice. Yes, Didi.
Excuse me.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
May I offer it?
That, you know, because the word,
Yeah.
Jai Shri Gurudev. Kanupriya Didi is here, always very affectionate.
Dandavat.
You want to say hello to everybody? Kanupriya Didi.
Hello, Dandavat.
Dandavat, Kanupriya.
Dandavat, Kanupriya Didi.
She's the perfect hostess. If you want, you can come and you can sit.
After,
sure.
A little later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, because this word preaching, it has some connotations. It has some negative connotation. It can give the idea of us like talking at people. You know, like we're trying to you know, push something to them. You know, we're imposing something upon them. And there's some, you know, there's some connotation of force there. And because really Krishna consciousness, it's our own wealth. And it's not something extraneous to ourselves that we have to push on to people, but it is actually our own wealth. And it's what the process is really about, is awakening what's already within. And so what I heard Gurudev say was that he preferred the word inspire. That we are inspiring, you know, it's not about preaching, it's about inspiring. And another point that he made, actually now I'm remembering, and this is published in Bhagavat Darshan. What is it called? Bhagavat Dharma. What is it called? The book Shuddha Shava published. I think it's called Bhagavat Darshan, little brown book. And there, Gurudev made this other point that we're not actually here to spread a particular conception. That's not exclusively what we're doing. And there's this really wonderful, what I mean is that it's not it's not an exchange of theoretical ideas. It's not just a philosophy that we're trying to convey or a teaching that we're trying to convey, but it's actually some living spiritual current, living spiritual substance. And in this part of Bhagavad Darshan, Srila Gurudev, he makes a very cryptic statement in this regard, and he says this subject matter is not for preaching. He said it is a transcendental fuse that can connect souls from the material to the spiritual. So it's like we're not just trying to push ideas on people, but it's more that we're in connection with a living current, and it transcends language, and it transcends thought, language, intellect, and that's what we're trying to connect people to. It's this like live wire, live current. Like we've heard it mentioned how in the early years of ISKCON, Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he had all of these young, very enthusiastic new devotees, and they felt they were getting something very real from Srila Swami Maharaj, and they were, but they didn't necessarily have very developed understanding as to what it was. and so Goswami Maharaj, he made a nice comment about this, how there were these like young new devotees out on the streets distributing books, and they were very successful, not because what they were saying was so clear, or that they were making a very good presentation of the teachings, but because people could see that these people they actually have something real. Maybe they don't know exactly what it is and they can't explain it very well, but they're connected to something real. And so that is what attracted others. Srila, we were remembering here the other day that example, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, when he was preaching. I'm sure someone, Govindranandini or Chinmoy, you can remember the details better. But there was that occasion when Srila Sridhar Maharaj was trying to collect some funds for preaching work in I think it was in South India, and there was one person, as I recall, some person in a particular person who had some authoritative position, who he had to get the green light from. If he got his support, then it would open doors for him. But that person wasn't very impressed, didn't really appreciate what they were doing. And so he was having some discussion with Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj was trying to convey the importance of this. And that man, he said, you don't even speak the local language, Tamil. You don't speak, you're not even, if you're going to be, he wasn't a religious man, so he couldn't be approached from that angle. But he said, at least if you were promoting the local language, if you were preaching in the Tamil language, then I could accept, on some cultural grounds. But you don't even know the language of the people here. So like how much good can you do? And Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, he gave that example, everybody knows, if I see somebody is drowning in the river, then what will I do? Will I I have to get help somehow. Should I go first to learn the local language? No, that would be foolish. I will run where there's some people who can help, and somehow, by any means, by some gesture, by some expression, I will convey to them that there's a man drowning, and you must come to help him. And that man was very impressed, and he said, oh, you conceive of your mission as having such urgency. It is that you conceive of your mission as having such great importance. And Srila Sridhar said, yes, that is exactly it. We feel like Srila Saraswati Thakur said, that the only famine is a famine. The only famine that I recognize in this world is the famine of Krishna consciousness, and so we have no other work, we have no other duty than to try to alleviate, the suffering due to lack of Krishna consciousness that is so pervasive in the world. So it goes just, to make that point, it goes beyond any mental or intellectual exchange of ideas, exchange of philosophy. It is a living current of spiritual truth, spiritual reality, which we want, like an electric current that we are trying to connect people to. So, in practice, we use the word preach, and Srila Gurudev himself would use it. It's a very, it's just, sometimes it's just, that's the only word that really conveys what you want to say, but we unhappily use it, and we avoid using it. We avoid using it when, as much as possible. We're trying to share something. We're trying to inspire. Gurudev, he gave that simple analogy. If we're eating something very nice, then naturally we want to share that with others. And he said, this is what preaching is. Not that, oh, I'm in a superior enlightened position and I want to benefit, I want to grace you with my superior knowledge, for my own prestige. Not like that, but oh, I'm tasting this apple and it tastes so good, and naturally I want to share it with others. This is how Facebook works, right? You like something, but then if you really like it, then you share it. It's so good that others have to see it. Everyone else has to see it. So this is more of our mood, our angle in trying to share Krishna consciousness. And that touches people more, that attracts them more than coming from this arrogant position of being a savior, the enlightened savior coming to help everyone, but we're all in this together, and I happen to have the good fortune of getting this nice food, and now I just want to share it with all of you. So yeah, I think those are my thoughts on that. Does that satisfy you, Govinda Nandini?
Wonderful, very beautiful, very inspiring.
I hear Nandini in the background there.
Yeah, moving from here to there. Unstoppable.
It was interesting for me to hear that, because whenever I went to Krishna meetings, and I went at some point, I went quite a lot. I always see that the reason I go there, it's not Krishna, it's just the people and the atmosphere. It was quite interesting to hear you say something about that.
Yeah. Another point is that a lot of what we're doing is just making friends. That's a much happier way of thinking about it as well. That we're just making friends. And
Okay, so yeah, sorry.
Yeah, And you know, like many people, they're also not ready to hear deep philosophy. But as you said, Francisca, you know, you're feeling like you belong somewhere. You're feeling home comfort. You're feeling a friendly atmosphere. And I mean, it's a mistake that many of us can make in trying to share the teachings of Krishna consciousness. You know, like we can get into debates, into philosophical debates, or think, oh, I've got to convince this person. But that's not what it's about, because we're not like building some intellectual structure. We're actually trying to promote the development of faith. And so actually establishing you know, a friendship, establishing an affectionate relationship, that's the most powerful way to promote the development of faith. Faith is something that exists independent of anything within our mental plane, you know.
But that's the reason I didn't continue, because I didn't make friends. But that's, so it's quite interesting. I'm just going to continue listening to you. That's all. Okay?
Okay, well, that's really nice input. And just thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
But you know, sometimes we experience, like one of my friends told me how they, you know, I'm not super intellectual. I don't have such great brain power, but I have a few friends who you know, are very, you know, super genius level. And one of them told me how he had some debates with different distinguished persons, like professors at university, and you know, about theology. And because he's so intelligent, he was able to defeat them always. And that gave him some degree of satisfaction that you know, he was like a young man and defeating persons senior to him, with the teachings of Krishna consciousness. And that gave him some degree of satisfaction for some time. And then he realized that they weren't actually benefiting from that in a substantial way. It wasn't like they decided, oh, wow, this is the real path. I'm gonna forget everything else. And no, there's just, they had some intellectual debate and he won, and then they carried on with their life. Like nothing, there was no spiritual transformation that took place as a result of that. I mean, you know, I have full faith that we can defeat anybody with the teachings of Krishna consciousness, because I believe that their teachings are more developed than any other. But that's not what we're trying, that's not necessarily how we can bring people into that, how we, you know, it's about a culture of faith. So it's a completely different thing from just establishing intellectual superiority. So you know, this angle of friendship is much more powerful, actually. And then that was something that I saw, especially when I was going to China previously, trying to help one of our devotees, Yudamanyu Prabhu. He started a small mission there. And you know, their background is very heavy, you know, in Red China. And for them, just in general, the concept of religion is difficult to grasp. You know, the idea of God is something somewhat foreign to them. And so our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he always encouraged Yudamanyu to keep things simple, not to be strict with them, to be very extremely liberal with them. And so that was always Yudamanyu's approach. And then several of the devotees there, the young devotees, they told me exactly what our friend here, Francisca, said, that what attracted them was the atmosphere, and it was Yudamanyu, you you know, who really drew them in. And they like one of them told me, I don't know about Krishna. Like, I feel like Krishna is very far away. And she told me, like, just, it's still, and she told me, I'm still like trying to get to grips with the idea of God. You know, that she wasn't fully comfortable with that idea. It was just a very foreign thing for her. You know, like it's interesting in our culture, you know, there are atheists, right? But at least they're familiar with the idea of God. You know, they grow up with the idea of God, and they've chosen to deny it, you know. But for many of them, just that idea, it's not something they've even been aware of, you know, as they're growing up. So it's something very foreign. And so she told me it was still difficult for her to come to terms with the philosophy. But it was Yudamanyu who really, you know, he exuded this affectionate mood, this family mood, and that was what attracted her. And there were several others who said the same thing, that they were coming there for the atmosphere, for a family mood, you know, that feeling of home comfort. And another interesting angle for preaching is that we need more friends ourselves. You know, like we don't want to be alone. You know, we need some friends, and we want to have Krishna conscious friends. And this idea is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. You know, not like, oh, I'm coming out to save the world, to help everybody, but you know, I need help. I need people to keep me in Krishna consciousness. And so in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's one place where one of the devotees, one of the Vaishnavas in Varanasi, which is like the Mayavad capital of India, the impersonal capital of India, you know, he thinks to himself that I'm going to have to live here a very long time. and I don't want to be alone. And so thinking like that, he requests Mahaprabhu to try to help the people. And so he organizes this meeting with many of these big Mayavadi sannyasis, and he invites Mahaprabhu there, and they have this big discussion. But that was part of his thinking. I have to be here for a long time. I need some friends. I need some friends around me. And one of our devotees in Ireland, Gopeshwar, he started a community there in Limerick, one of the cities in Ireland. And the way it started was, you know, it wasn't something he'd really set out to do, but what happened is he had a divorce, and he moved to a new city, you know, by himself, and he had to like kind of start again. And in the course of he's a psychologist, and in the course of his work, you know, then naturally some discussion of Krishna consciousness came up, and he was also feeling like he needed some friends around him, and he said he spoke about it with Goswami Maharaj, and Goswami Maharaj, he gave him that suggestion, like, don't think of it, because he was feeling like, oh, I'm just one small person in this big city, you know, what can I do? But Goswami Maharaj, he gave him that angle, just think of it like this, that you need some friends, and you need to make some friends to have around you. You don't want to be alone. So that's another angle. Yeah.
Vishakha Devi. I don't know what.
Dandavat, who's that?
Ananda Swarupini.
Oh, Ananda Srupini.
I know everyone. I just wanted to say, just to allow me to properly introduce. So, Francisca is my friend from university. I
Aha.
think she's gone to wash dishes. Yeah, she's my friend from uni, and she she first introduced me to the Hare Krishnas.
Oh, really?
Brighton. And so Jai, and I invited her to this talk, and I kind of really
Wow.
loved it. And yeah,
So we have Francesca to thank
yeah.
for you for having you with us. Well, that's a big credit to her name.
Mhm. Yeah. So.
Didi,
Yes,
Didi,
Prabhu.
on this subject, I always think about Bimala Devi Dasi,
Aha.
because her mood is not that she's preaching, is that she desperately needs to give the mercy of Gurudev and Gauranga to others. Like, it's like she knows what it is, and she needs to share that with others, because she knows that is what everybody is looking for. You can see it, and every time she goes out and we do any event, she's always just affectionate with everyone, friendly, loving with everyone, because she feels like you need this.
Beautiful. There's one place where Gurudev he expresses an idea like that, how that, you know, if we're really feeling the value of this, then we can't live without trying to extend that to others. You know, it's a necessity within the heart that you just have, you know, like sometimes people, they'll say, oh, I want to shout it off of a rooftop, you know. And when people are really excited about something, then they'll talk about shouting it off of a rooftop. There's this feeling that we get when something gives us so much joy that we have to tell the whole world. You know, we have to tell everyone, we have to announce it, we have to share it. So yes, we see that kind of mood in Bimala Didi. And completely without any ego. Completely free of that. Any more thoughts from anyone? Chintamani, I'd like to hear something from you. You're so enthusiastic about preaching.
No, actually, I was feeling really. I was just remembering, I was feeling embarrassed. Is my sound working?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just feeling embarrassed about remembering how, before I really knew about what Sri Chaitanya Saraswat was, or Bimala Didi, she had given me a flyer, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I said, Didi, if you give me one more flyer, one more time, because this is at Bhakti Fest. And I remember I kind of was like mean to her about like, what, don't you remember me? Like, how can you give me like more than one, like, honey, this is the 3rd time, like, I'm over 6 feet tall, like, please remember me. Like, so I was laughing, I'm like, oh man, Bimala, she's so sincere, and I'm so evil, like, I'm like ready to like, you know, assert myself to somebody when anyway, I'm not very sincere at all, actually, that's the truth, and thank you for encouraging me to try, pretend to try.
No, but Chintamani, tell us what drives you, because I see how enthusiastic you are to share the wealth of Krishna consciousness.
I don't know. I just feel like the Hare Krishna movement has so much to offer, and I'm just like really fallen. Like, but I heard you get Krishna consciousness when you share it. So in that spirit of like, well, if I want to have a chance of getting this divine treasure that I just read about and hear about from the Siddha Mahapurush, and you know the wonderful Vaishnavas, then maybe there'll be some mercy coming down to me if I can, right, just somehow push in that direction, Mahaprabhu's movement. And listening to you definitely helps inspire me. But yeah, it's probably just a codependent thing too. Like, you know, like I grew up Catholic, just being like, well, I've got something really, you know, just wanting to change others or whatever, just being toxic in my own right and dovetailing my own toxicity with wanting to share Krishna consciousness. It kind of works out well for my particular anarthas.
That's beautiful, and that's another really valuable point, that we do in the more that we share what Krishna consciousness we have, the more we invite more to come. You know, that this is something Srila Sridhar Maharaj has discussed several times. You know, our guardians, they're not giving us wealth for us to just sit on it and keep it to ourselves, but they're expecting us, you know, there's an understanding there that what they give to us, we will also extend to others. And he gives the example of a current, a stream. You know, in a river, the freshest and the oh, that's nice. Keshav Maharaj says preaching equals people reaching. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gives this nice analogy that in a river, the freshest water is the moving water. That the cleanest and the freshest, the purest water is the moving water. Whereas water that's stagnant, you know, disease, you know, germs, they multiply there. The stagnant water is unclean. You know, so in the same way, if there's some flow, you know, that we are distributing what we have, then we're inviting more to descend. So yes, that is a nice point. You know, and you know, preaching doesn't mean that we all have to, you know, sit in the chair and give a formal talk, but simply, you know, talking to our friends, you know, or in little ways, you know, going out in the street and wearing kunti mala, you know, people will ask you about that, and then taking that opportunity to share something, you know, just in our, like Kanu Priya, she's like that, you know, like it's funny actually, because I don't understand exactly, she does different things, but one of the things she does is something like what is it she called it? Like she does this kind of like, you know, like in businesses, there are people who help them with communication, and like she does something with helping businesses in their communication and assertive communication and this kind of stuff, and life coaching, this kind of stuff. And she says, she said, everybody knows my favorite topic is Gurudev. And she has like she has a big network of friends and colleagues, and she's been in lots of different professions. She had her own language school. She just has all of these acquaintances and friends and colleagues, and she shares with everybody, you know. And she took me out one day, and we were visiting some of the people she knows, and there was this one office where she did some work, and then I heard her speaking in Hungarian, and she mentioned the word sukrti. She mentioned the word agyata sukrti to her. And so later she told me that she told her, because the lady had given me a glass of water, she was telling her that she got some agyata sukrti. You know, this is like some simple lady, she doesn't know anything, and Kanabri is telling her, oh, you've got some agyata sukriti. Like she doesn't have any shyness, and she just tells everybody she meets, and you know, she's a well-educated professional lady, and very friendly and loving, and everybody listens to her, you know. So just like in your daily life, it's very powerful. We don't have to all be, you know, official preachers, but just in our day-to-day dealings with the people that we meet and work with, we can share something. And again, it's not about a battle of ideas. It's not about trying to impose a particular idea, but necessarily, but it's more about giving them some feeling, you know, that, oh, this person has something real, you know, this person has something alive and vital and beautiful and attractive. So, you know, in our simple way, we can all, you know, do something to share and extend the wealth that we've received. So yeah, thank you, Chintamani. That was beautiful. Chinmoy Prabhu, you want to add something more?
No, Didi, that's really wonderful. I think Govinda Nandini had another.
Okay.
Yeah, my second question is about form and substance. If you could speak. I don't know if we have time.
Yeah, sure.
Speak a little bit about they being separate things or complementary things, or when do they touch like sahajism, if they do.
Okay, that's a great topic for discussion. Yeah, I mean, we tend to go in the direction of being a little fanatic. I mean, I'm glad you brought this up, because we tend to go in the direction of being a little fanatic about, it's all about substance, right? We tend to go in that direction, you know? And of course, the substance will always be the most important factor. And this is something this is the theme of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, you know, and he's you know, he's made that famous expression, I'm a form breaker, not a form maker. In Sri Guru and His Grace, there's that chapter, God consciousness versus society consciousness, and he speaks about how the society should promote God consciousness. And this is really the point, that the form should support the culture of the substance. That is the role of the form. It gives some framework. It gives something to encourage the growth, the development of the substance. However, if that form is faulty, if that form is not supportive, then it must be given up. And also, if we don't have the privilege of being able to have both, then we have to always choose the substance. But ideally, we do want some form. There was one occasion, I mean, in Vrindavan, well, I'll go back. You know, there was this one occasion when there was a book there was some discussion of a book being published, and there was some discussion of how it would be printed and what the cover would be like. And this was going on in front of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And somebody there said dismissively, oh, we don't care about the form. You know, we're only interested in the substance. And they were saying, oh, doesn't matter what the cover's like. We can just have a really, you know, ordinary, cheap cover. It's all about the substance, what's inside. And then they said that thinking Srila Sridhar Maharaj would be pleased with that, you know, because Srila Sridhar Maharaj is known as being the form breaker, right? But Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he responded to that by saying, in Vrindavan, form and substance are one. In Vrindavan, the form is an expression of substance. And he said, and so we will aspire for that Vrindavan standard. So, you know, that's the ideal, that the form complements and supports the substance of Krishna consciousness. we're just as a small example, we are encouraged to dress a particular way, because when I'm wearing sari and tilak and kunti mala, then I'm constantly being reminded of what is my real purpose in life. And if we are seeing others are also dressed like that, then we're being constantly reminded what we're really about, what our real identity is. But at the same time, we have to be very careful for there not to be, there's a particular, how can we say, there's a particular balance that has to be achieved. Because the danger is that, there's always danger of being too extreme in either direction. We're always advised to take the middle path. This is what Yukta Vairagya is about. Not too far this way, too far that way, but the middle path, just right. And so, if we take the example of devotional dress, there are some people who completely reject it and say, oh, it doesn't matter, that's all external. That's external, it doesn't matter. And of course, that's true. It is external. And we don't, and for someone like me, it's different because I'm in the, in my role, I'm expected to wear the cloth all the time. But for others who are living as householders or have jobs, then it's different. It won't always be practical for them to wear the devotional dress, but at least, when they come to the temple, when possible, they can wear. But the point I was making there is that, yes, the dress is external and it doesn't have to be worn all the time. But at the same time, it is a token which reminds us, which increases our remembrance. And wearing the devotional dress, it supports a devotional atmosphere. And so therefore, especially in a temple environment, it is encouraged that the devotees will try to wear devotional dress because it's supporting that atmosphere, it's supporting a particular mood, and which is helpful for everyone, for ourselves and for others. So we don't want to go too far that way and say, oh, it's all external, it doesn't matter. And then at the same time, there's also a danger in the other direction where there's too much emphasis on it, where people are being judged if they're not, living up to that standard of form. Or it may become an expression of ego, that who's wearing the nicest sari, who's wearing the best dhoti, who's wearing the biggest kunti mala, who has the best tilak. That's another deviation that can develop. Like there was this one occasion, Sudarshan told me this. It's very heavy. I'm kind of shy to say it, but it's very powerful and instructive. Sudarshan Prabhu told me of this one occasion where how can I say this? He visited another group of Vaishnavas, let's say, outside of the Math. And Gurudev, and when he came back to the Math, and Gurudev asked him where he'd been, and he told him, and Gurudev said, oh yes, I know those persons. And he said they how did he say it exactly? They wear tilak very nicely, they play mridanga very nicely, they wear their dhotis very nicely. And then he said, and I'm thinking that their spiritual life is finished for this lifetime. Very heavy. I'm thinking their spiritual life is finished for this lifetime. And so, yeah, and that, as you mentioned, as you indicated, that's going in the direction of Sahajism. You know, because in the most basic sense, Sahajism means form over substance. Sahajism means a type of imitationism. And then there's this subtle idea there that the form can produce the substance, when it's actually the other way around. Substance will produce form. Your substance will produce, how can I say this? Substance. Okay, well, if we take the example of the holy name, it is conscious. It is our conscious, heart substance which will bring about the revelation of the real name. It is not that by our, on the other, conversely, it's not that our material vibration, repeated material vibration, is going to produce substance. By making some emotional gestures and movements, we're not going to bring about real ecstasy. Rather, it is a real mood of ecstasy that will cause uncontrollable movements and symptoms. So this has to be, the equation has to be the right way around. So, both there are both of these dangers there, like too dismissive of the form, and also being overly emphasizing the form. Neither of those are helpful for us. And this is also mentioned in, we can also connect to this with the idea of niyamagraha in Upadeshamrita, in regards to observance of the rules and regulations in our practice. To be too strict or to be too dismissive, neither are helpful. But it's the principle of yukta vairagya that we want to employ here, that we take just as much of it as is helpful to support our spiritual practice, not less and not more. So, and then there may need to be adjustments of the form. The substance will always be the same. We're always cultivating the same substance, but the form that we take, that may change. In terms of our dress, in terms of the particular society or organization in which we're practicing, so on and so forth. These things may all change. And what model, what lifestyle we're living, whether brahmachari, sannyasi, grihasta, those things may all change. The form, it may change. And we have to be aware of when is appropriate to, to make some adjustment in that sense. But that inner substance, that will remain the same. We're still cultivating the same thing, but the style, the form of it, that may change due to time, place, and circumstance. Our way of preaching, our way of distributing, like we were mentioning China, in China, you can't go wearing your kunti mala and your sari or dhoti or tilak, everything has to be done in a everything has to be more low key there. So, yeah. Does that address your points?
Wonderful thoughts. Wonderful. Thank you for your friendly explanation.
Do you want to add any? Do you want to? I know you've thought about this yourself. Govindranandini, she gives classes in Brazil. She's very qualified Vaishnava. You must have some thoughts yourself.
No, actually, I've been hearing these discussions, and I couldn't go on. I couldn't think more about it, and that's why I'm asking you to help me clarify. And you brought up some very important points. I'm wordless.
that chapter in Sri Guru and His Grace is very helpful in this regard. God consciousness versus society consciousness, and there's that expression there, how the society. Well, I think I already said it, but I'll say it again. Shintamani saying, what about real sincerity versus low self-esteem? Yeah, that's a great point of discussion. But yeah, so the society, it should support the inner culture. But if it's in opposition, then it must be rejected. So anything in the world of form, anything in terms of form, it should promote the dress. You know, if we're taking that example of the dress, it should support our inner culture. Everything is perfect when it's in the right dosage, when it's properly adjusted. I mean, it's like Srila Saraswati. That expression is just so perfect of Saraswati Thakur's religion is proper adjustment. You know, because all the ingredients are perfect. It's just about how much and where and in what way you're using them. So form is not a bad thing, but it is in what way you are applying it and how much. It has to be properly adjusted.
Yeah, and just one thing that just occurred to me. Sometimes what the dose for me is different from the dose for another person. So the best thing not to judge one another. Oh, he's too much attached to form.
Yes.
No, maybe he needs that amount, right?
Yes. That's I'm really happy you made that point. Absolutely. Yeah, that will be different for everyone. What will be appropriate for one will not be appropriate for others. One example that comes to mind is of when Gurudev gave sannyas. We won't mention names, but when Gurudev gave sannyas to one person, he was quite liberal in certain, how can we say, in certain points. Gurudev was liberal. He didn't, I mean, of course there was I'll just say, we won't say the name. That Gurudev allowed that sannyasi to continue to serve with their previous wife. You know, that they were serving in the same place still together. Of course, they're maintaining a certain standard, but normally a sannyasi will leave that place completely. They would go to another city, go to another temple. That would normally be the standard. But in that case, because of that particular individual, Gurudev felt it would be better for them to be in that environment. But then there was another case where someone Gurudev gave sannyas to, they imitated that, and Gurudev was chastised them and said, I expect the highest standard from you. You know, he didn't approve of it in another case. No, also like in the case of the Chinese devotees I mentioned, Gurudev was very clear that he wanted them to be treated in a very liberal way. And Yudamanyu told us how, Yudamanyu Prabhu told us how once he said to Gurudev, you know, Gurudev, I'm not so strict with them. And Gurudev was riding his scooter at that time, and he stopped and he turned to him and he said, Prabhu, I never want to hear you say the word strict and Chinese in the same sentence. You know? And there were certain points which he was very liberal about with the Chinese. He didn't expect them to follow the same things that he wouldn't tolerate from us, you know, he accepted from them, because he understood they were coming from a different culture and that a different standard had to be applied. You know, Gurudev could be very liberal and he could also be very strict. And it depended upon the individual. So yeah, I'm really happy you made that point. That is something that we have to bear in mind. Nice, very nice topics. Okay. Well, Chintamani has shared some nice topics here for discussion. Real sincerity versus low self-esteem. And what about aspiring sadhakas utilizing their conditions, potential, mental illness, delusion as proper devotional service and no room for discussion, feedback? Well, these are all really great topics for discussion. I think I'm going to finish now. Oh, I'm actually a little wiped out because as I said, we just came in the door from Budapest and we had a long day. So I think I'm going to end here. But I will make a note of these. I'm going to copy these questions. I'm going to copy them here, and we can discuss them next week. Very wonderful as always to be in all of your good association. Suvasini Didi's with us, also joined us, Dandavat. And Giridhari Prabhu, who's next door, he's in about 40 minutes away from where I am, our Dandavats. And I think everyone else we said hello to already.
That's Didi, very beautiful discussion, very nice.
Very happy to have you with us, Didi.
Thank you.
You are an inspiration. Okay, my Dandavat pranams to all of you, and hoping we can see all of you.
Dandavati, thank you so much
week.
for spending time with us.
Oh, thank you for engaging me, keeping me busy. Okay.
Jai Vishakha Devi Dasi ki.
Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai.
Jai.